apparently we are allowed to talk about. There are other browsers besides Chrome. Just real quick, my name is Raymond Camden. I am a developer for Adobe. I'm not the person who pushes out the Flash updates and the PDF updates, so don't blame me. I used to be an evangelist, actually, but then someone told them that I don't know how to resize an image in Photoshop, and that was the end of that. So if you want to follow me on my blog, it's raymondcamden.com, and I'm on Twitter also at Raymond Camden. And I swear I only talk about serious, important stuff, so definitely follow me, please. So we're going to be talking today about screwing up. I happen to be an expert at making mistakes. In fact, I tend to make really, really bad mistakes quite often. I can still remember my very first program. This was a long, long time ago on an Apple IIe. It was a 2-line program. It probably was Hello World, and I spent like 2 hours trying to make this 2-line program work. And it was just driving me crazy. It was 2 lines of code. Like, how hard can that be? Turns out, when I typed in my computer program, I actually wrote the first line of code, and then I hit the space bar to scroll the cursor all the way to the next line, as opposed instead of hitting enter. So I started off really, really bad, and it's been mostly uphill since then. But I discovered pretty early on that I love the code, and I also happen to make a lot of mistakes. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with making mistakes. That's totally fine. What is really wrong is not being able to figure out what is wrong when you make a mistake. So one of the things that I do when I present and on my blog, I like to encourage people to send me their problems, send me their questions. A lot of times it turns out to be great blogging material. A lot of times I learn stuff as well. But at least once a week, I'll get someone commenting or someone with a problem, and they will say, it's not working. Now, I know no one in this audience probably ever says that, but you probably have co-workers who say something like that, right? Like, yeah, I typed in this 100-line program and it's not working. And then you have to kind of fight and pull to figure out, okay, can you tell me why it's not working? Can you tell me what line is throwing the error? Can you tell me, based on your process, where are things failing? It's been my experience, both on the client side and on doing server-side development, just being able to get down to the root cause of whatever is wrong. 9 out of 10 times, by the time I get there, I figured out what my problem is. And when I don't know what the solution is, once I know what the problem is, I know what to Google and find on Stack Overflow. So don't be this person. Never say it's not working. You definitely want to make sure that you have those skills in there to be able to figure out what is broken. So to be fair, we've kind of gone a long, long way from the old days of web development. So just to kind of give you a story, and I apologize for all the old guy stories, but I am an old guy. I was working on a pretty large server-side application back in 98, 99, not a long time ago, but quite a few years ago. And this was a large site with multiple logins and e-commerce and all that jazz. Well, we ran into a bug where you would log into the site and you'd be immediately logged off. So that was weird, right? So I looked at the server-side code. This was built in Cold Fusion. Nothing was wrong there. And unfortunately, the browser did nothing at all to help. There was a basic JavaScript error console, but that was it. So I spent about 2 days just going crazy. And every time I tell the story, it gets a little bit longer. So hopefully it wasn't 2 days, but I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what was wrong. Well, guess what? We were using cookies to mark the fact that you were logged in. And I mentioned that this was a large site, had a lot of various components and a lot of things going on. Well, back then, browsers had a rule for cookies, and the rule was very simple. I will accept 20 cookies from your domain. Now, what would happen when you sent 21 cookies? Well, absolutely nothing. So I literally spent a couple days trying to find out why it was failing, and it was simply the browser saying, you know what, you send me 21 cookies, I don't care. I'm just going to ignore it. I won't tell you anything. I won't let you know. I'm just going to silently ignore it. And that, to me, I think represents, what client-side debugging was like about 8 or 9 years ago. It was horrible. Now, to be fair, there was a reason for this. HTML back in the old days was like crap. I mean, I think crap is being nice. And to be fair, I wrote a lot of that crap myself. I still have public web pages that have tables for layout and font face and font family and all that fun stuff. I wrote some pretty bad HTML. So browsers for a long time have kind of had this thing of, I'm going to do my best to just handle the crap you sent me and not freak out. I'm going to do my best to not scare the normal people out there and throw all kinds of errors. So, there is a reason for that. But, luckily we have much better tools now and, much better ways to debug what's going wrong. And by the way, in case you're curious, I actually spent a Friday night seeing how many cookies I could send to Chrome, because that's an exciting Friday night for me. And I got to about 430 or so, and at that point, Apache began to throw errors, not Chrome. So at least for Chrome, you don't have the limit on 20 cookies anymore. By the way, don't do that. Please don't send 400 cookies to your users. So I think we all recognize Chrome is awesome, especially in terms of what I see other developers using. Chrome seems to be at least the most popular browser. I know on my blog it is. I probably have more of a developer audience than most people. Over the entire internet, certainly I think it's not number one. I had to check that, but I think amongst people who are actually building web pages, it's become the best browser. And you know what? That's great. It deserves that credit. Chrome has really kind of advanced the browser in terms of what we give for end users as well as what we give to developers as well. And I'm seeing multiple people still talking about sound. Rob, do I want to maybe pause and try one more time to...
Why don't you open up your display properties, your system properties there, and go to sound. There's usually a gain thing in there. So yeah, there you go. Try that now. Actually, pick the microphone that you're actually using. I don't know if you're adjusting the right way. Yeah. There you go.
I'm lame. Okay, let me speak now.
Oh, that is much better. Yes.
All right.
We could actually hear the difference. Drop it down just a little bit more. Drop it down just a little bit more.
All right.
There you go.
How's this?
Thank you very much.
Sweet. So can I use my outside voice now? Or
yes.
Should I try to... All right. So hopefully you guys heard all my wonderful jokes. For you guys who couldn't hear me too well, I was awesome. Okay. So anyway, so going for it. Yeah. So again, and to be clear, none of this particular presentation is meant to badmouth Chrome at all. To me, Chrome is kind of the gold standard for dev tooling, and it's the ideal. But it's not the only thing out there. So kind of one more story here, and this is the last one. This is not a old story per se. About 2 years or so ago, I decided to take a look at App Cache. That was one of the cool new HTML5 things. Again, I had a free Friday night. I thought, let me just play with App Cache. I haven't tried it out yet, and I wanted to see it. So I began to work on it and go through the example code and all that, and nothing was working for me. I didn't realize at the time that the App Cache API was not the best API out there. I just, to me it looked simple, but it just refused to work. And for the heck of it, I don't know why, I thought, let me just try in Firefox. I knew that Firefox supported App Cache. Open up Firefox, ran my exact same sample code. And for some reason at that time, Firefox just spit out a slew of data in the console about what was going on with App Cache. And it told me within 2 seconds what the error was. Now, I think Chrome has better App Cache testing now, so that may not apply. But it was really kind of a wake-up call to just kind of, you know what, something's going wrong. Let me try a different browser and see if the built-in basic reporting is a bit different. And I've been trying to do that since then. And by the way, I think Firefox is actually a pretty darn cool browser now in general anyway. I've almost switched over. I think Gmail is pretty much the only thing that's kind of holding me back because I like how Gmail works in Chrome better. Anyway, so for the game plan today, I want to quickly go over what Chrome does. I'm assuming that most of you have a good idea of what exists in the DevTools, but I just want to kind of give a high-level look at what I see as the major features, with the thinking here that we can use that as a comparison to look at a couple of other browsers. Now, on top of that, I happened to find some broken code, certainly nothing that I wrote, of course. But I did find some code that was broken, and we're going to look at that code and see how the different browsers represent those particular errors. So just real quick, talking about what Chrome DevTools do, and you could talk about the Chrome tools for a complete day. So this will be about 2 or 3 minutes, very high-level summary, nothing more. So one of the first things you could do is inspect and modify the DOM. I can tell you that this is part of the DevTools that I ignored for a long time, because in my mind I thought, why do I care about the DOM, right? I'm generating my HTML on the server. I know what the HTML is because I wrote it. And it took me a while to realize that one of the really good use cases for this was when I was using client-side code to modify the DOM, which is pretty common. So I may be using JavaScript to get some JSON data and then draw something out. And when I screw that up, which I do quite a bit, being able to look at the DOM and see what was spit out is actually pretty darn useful. Another big one is inspecting network calls. So a lot of my client-side development tends to work with APIs and work with pure data. And being able to look at what the network sends back and forth is crucial. There's so many different ways you could screw that up, especially if you're using some third-party API, if you're using something on the back end like PHP or Cold Fusion, and you're creating JSON on the fly. You have a lot of opportunities to screw up. Debugging JavaScript, I'll be honest, I don't use the debugger very often. I know that will make me sound lame, but I'll be honest. I do use it from time to time, but I tend to be more of a console.log person. And again, it's lame, but that's what I use more. But I like that I have that debugger there. It comes in handy when I need it. Audits and performance, and that's just kind of talking about looking at how well your client-side stuff is working. Now, this is an area that I've not touched at all because I'm not doing high-end animations. Most of the data-centric stuff I'm doing tends to perform pretty well. So this is an area that I've not used a lot yet, but it is something that Chrome does very well, and it's something that I want to point out in the other browsers as well in terms of how they handle looking at performance and looking at your JavaScript, HTML, CSS, etc. Now, in terms of mobile dev, I think Chrome actually handles this pretty well in 2 different areas. So on one hand, you have mobile emulation. So that could be everything from just resizing the viewport to see what's there, as well as emulating some of the UX for the mobile platform. So Chrome, for example, allows you to translate a click into a touch event. That's handy. It allows you to simulate GPS settings to do stuff like that. So we can look at that as a particular feature. And in terms of when a browser vendor comes from someone who's also selling a mobile platform, so Chrome, Microsoft, Firefox, Safari, they all have a corresponding mobile device platform. Chrome DevTools also has support for working with their own Android platform. So with the other browsers, we'll talk a bit about how well they support working with their, those particular handsets. Storage is a big one. I tend to do a lot with local storage, WebSQL, Index.db. Chrome DevTools has really good support for allowing you to look at that storage system and work with it, see the data in there, perform ad hoc queries and stuff. And being that I tend to focus more on the data side of client-side apps, I don't do a lot with CSS and pretty things. I like to say I make the ugly. I like storage, and I like building examples that use that. So this is a powerful part of the DevTools that I make use of. Extensions, now to be clear, when I talk about extensions, I'm not talking about browser add-ons. Every browser I'm showing today makes use of extensions. I'm talking specifically about, does the browser allow you to modify the DevTools themselves to add something? If you don't know what I'm talking about there, this is just one other tab. I'll open up DevTools real quick. See this AngularJS tab here? That's an example of Chrome saying, I will allow you to integrate with DevTools within the browser itself. Now, in theory, any browser maker that supports add-ons could build support for working with AngularJS. They could put it as a right-click menu, they could put it in the UI someplace else. But I think it's something different when you're actually allowed to work within the DevTools itself. So again, that's what I'm talking about there. So that's Chrome, and you probably have a good idea of those, and you probably have used those before. Something else that kind of concerns me is how you find out about this type of stuff. As you know, every single day there's a new browser, there's a new JavaScript framework. I've been talking for 20 minutes, and there's probably 10 new JS frameworks. So keeping up with all of this stuff is hard to do. And specifically, with a lot of browsers going into this rolling update, for example, Chrome will probably prompt me to update while I'm talking. How do you, as a developer, know what Chrome is doing? It's a valid question, right? Like, so how do you find out what's going on? So in terms of the main docs, the URL is right there. You can Google it as well, obviously, and you have a great documentation there about DevTools. There's also a Twitter handler that you can follow, Chromium Dev. But how do you keep up with that? So the main docs would tell you like what's in there right now. Now imagine you go on vacation and you leave your laptop and you're gone for a month, and in that time, Google has released a new update. Well, this is where things get a bit difficult. If you actually, in Chrome, go to About Chrome, you get nothing in there that relates to release notes, right? So you don't get any type of data. If you Google for the release notes, the examples that I got are not that good, so there is a blog called Google Chrome Releases. And if you go there, you could find something, for example, talking about the stable channel update. But if you go just to the homepage, you'll see there's a mixture of the beta stuff, the dev stuff. You'll see stuff about admin consoles and Chrome OS. As a developer, I'm primarily concerned about, tell me what is new in the released version of Chrome. I'm excited about the dev stuff, that's cool, but I want to know what I can use right now, and that's not necessarily easy to find. So you can follow some of the Chrome people on Google+, and that's nice. There's a website for html5rocks.com, and yeah, that's nice. But to me, it's not ideal. What I want as a web developer, and I'll be whiny a bit here, but I know what I want. I've been at this for a while. I would really like to have an easy way to find the docs and know what's changed. So, for example, Chrome right now is on version like 94 or something. No, that's probably 36, right? So how do I find out what the released version of Chrome 36 had versus Chrome 35? Now, I'm sure if I spent a good hour or two, I could figure that out, but I shouldn't have to spend a good hour or two. So I would love to see, good documentation in terms of what has changed, both in terms of what HTML and JS and CSS I can use, but also at the browser level, including the DevTools as well. And again, I'm not saying this doesn't exist for Chrome, but you have to be really kind of proactive to kind of figure out what this stuff is. So that's Chrome, and again, I kind of put that up there, outside the documentation as being kind of the ideal and what we should look for. Now let's take a look at Firefox, and like I said, I'm real darn close to switching to Firefox. So what I'm going to do is just switch to Firefox real quick and open up a few different examples of broken code. So first thing I'll do is just open up the DevTools, and let me move this go-to training a bit more. Okay, so number one, it looks different. No big surprise there. I'm going to go ahead and just run a file that's broken. It has some bad JavaScript in it. And no big surprise, you see reference X is not defined. I'm not going to show this because basically in JavaScript, I tried to use X, and X wasn't there. So this console pretty much looks the same as Chrome, a bit nicer, I think. But you do have much deeper options in terms of filtering. So one of the things I remember for a long time seeing in Chrome is that jQuery at some point had a particular function in there that was using a deprecated function. And every time I'd hit a site in Chrome that made use of jQuery, I got all kinds of warnings in the JavaScript console. One of the things that Firefox lets you do is go in there and actually turn that stuff off. So I think that's really nice. And I'm being asked to increase the font size, and always surprised when things work. I actually did the Control Plus in DevTools, and it just did DevTools, so that's really, really nice. Make that a little bit bigger as well. So no big surprise. Again, you have a console just like Chrome, but you have nicer options in terms of being able to filter it, which I think is pretty cool. And we can go through all of these. You have an inspector to do your DOM stuff, again, just like Chrome. One of the things I think is a bit nicer in terms of working with the DOM. Oh, and I see Edwin's asking about the link. I don't have this presentation online yet, but I'll do it within the hour after I'm done. Yeah, most of my presentation is going to be stuff like this. So, yeah, I figured the slides weren't quite that crucial, but I'll definitely put them up. One of the really nice things that Firefox does that's kind of cool is you can actually edit styles in here. And in this case, my example is not using a style sheet. And it's like, hey, dude, that's fine. Just bam, put a new one in there. So I can go in here and I can type. And remember, I don't do design. So there you go. But I really like the ability to edit style sheets in Firefox versus Chrome. Now, in Chrome, you could definitely go in there and you can modify CSS. I just find the user interface for that to be a little bit more awkward. Another example I want to show, kind of a classic mistake that people tend to make, is breaking remote XHR. So if you have JavaScript, and let me actually show this one just to make sure you guys can see. There it is. Okay, so all I'm doing is using jQuery to load Google, and that's not on the same domain as my browser. So I should and do get an error. And I really like what Firefox does here because it actually tells me not only do I have a CORS error, but it even tells me how to fix it. Oh my God, so that's freaking awesome, right? If we compare that to Chrome, excuse me, let's see, we do have an error, but it's not telling you how to fix it. So I give points to Firefox there for being just a little bit more verbose and telling you how to do it. So other things that you have compared to Chrome, you have a network analysis as well. If I were to go in here and test some network calls, for example, I have a test that just loads some JSON. I could see the network data in there. One thing that, let me open this up a little bit more. So one thing that Firefox does that's really cool, I'm loading some JSON here, but I screwed up, and I swear I screwed up on accident. But Firefox will actually tell you when you have bad JSON. So you can see here in my response, I forgot my comma right there, which again, I did on purpose just for this. Firefox actually told me exactly what I did wrong, which I think is just uber cool. If I can go in here and actually load the correct one, you see it's all fine, and it actually parsed that JSON and spit it out for me in a nice kind of browse way. I will say one issue that I have with this is that Firefox is only showing me the nicely formatted version of that. If for some reason this was still not quite right, you can't actually see the pure string version of this. When you compare it to Chrome, that's something that I think is missing that I would like to see. And maybe it is there and I just don't recognize it, but there we go. So you have both a nice formatted version as well as the pure string. But it is what it is. You have a debugger built in. It just kind of works as you would expect. One kind of nice thing about this is that you can actually black box jQuery. So if you've ever done any debugging and see it where it stops as it enters jQuery code, in Firefox you can actually say, you know what, when you enter a framework like jQuery, just ignore it. You know, don't pause in there and skip over it. This feature is coming to Chrome. I believe it's in the dev channel now, but it's not in the release channel. It is currently in Firefox right now. So that is pretty darn cool. There's a couple more things I want to show you that I'm not using. If I go into the settings, you can see you can actually tweak what Firefox shows. So they have a web audio editor. They have a canvas tool, and they have a shader editor for working with WebGL. So I don't do anything with animation, so I don't touch WebGL. I don't play with Canvas very often, and I don't do anything with web audio. And I love that Firefox let me say, you know what, I'm not going to use those tools pretty often. Let me just hide that from the view. If I want those back, then I can bring them back, you know, whenever it makes sense. And if you do tweak a lot of that and you don't do a lot of network, obviously you can turn those things off and, you know, do whatever makes sense. So that is kind of the high-level support. I'll also point out they do support Firefox OS, obviously. So if you're doing anything for the Firefox OS mobile system, you can not only fire off an emulator from here, but you can debug from there as well. I've done a little bit of work with Firefox OS using the emulator. For the most part, it just works fine, but they do support that well. They also have a good responsive tester as well. The main things missing compared to Chrome, you don't have a great way of working with storage. So again, I like local storage, I like WebSQL, you know, I like all that stuff. You don't get the nice visual tools there. And if you've actually never seen those, this is how Chrome shows it. So you can see immediately IndexedDB, both local and session storage, heck, even cookies, application cache, and WebSQL. So it doesn't mean you can't test that in Firefox, but you're going to be going into the console to look at this and kind of do it more manually. The other thing you can't do yet is modify DevTools. Now, I spoke to some of the people at Mozilla last couple of days. That feature is coming. Now, Firefox does support add-ons, so if you wanted to build, for example, a IndexedDB extension, you could do it. It just won't be integrated directly into the DevTools. And again, that is something that they are adding a bit later. Now, there's one more feature that I want to show. Let me get back to my slide deck here. That it just kind of blows me away as how cool this is. So I use my DevTools quite a bit. When I'm on my laptop, I don't keep them open a lot because my real estate is a bit limited. Firefox has a feature called the toolbar, and you can enable it right there in the settings, the developer toolbar, and it actually creates a little file down, a little toolbar down there where you can actually type command line stuff in. So if I close the main dev console, I still have access to various DevTool stuff directly within my browser, and look how small and thin this is. Even better, check out Chrome. If I go to Chrome and I'm going to go to a page with an error on it, the more, you know, the very simple one. Let me close my DevTools. I have an error on this page, and I don't know about it unless I install a third-party extension. Now, I've done that right there, just adding that little red marker there. But unless I have my DevTools open, I'm not going to see that particular error in there. In Firefox, if we go back and if we run that exact same file, you guys hopefully should see that little marker right there in the corner. The go-to training stuff keeps hiding it for me. But it's right there, so it's very nice and obvious. I can click that to open it and see the error. So I really like how this is more friendly for a laptop or just a small screen environment. And of course, from here, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. It has autocomplete to help you out. It has a help screen, obviously, so you can go there and see what's there. Just to show you kind of some of the commands, you can actually edit stuff from the command line. You can inspect the DOM. So I did inspect body. That may have gone a little bit too fast there. I apologize. I typed in inspect body, and it showed up. If I did inspect H1, it would inspect that instead. So really, really nice. I could turn on print emulation directly by using a media command. I can resize to show some of the nice responsive emulation. And I love that if I type resize again, it's probably very faint for you guys, but it's actually auto-completing resize off. So it recognized that I just turned it on, and that most likely my next command will be to turn it off. That's just smart and nice. There's also the ability to take screenshots directly from the toolbar. I could take a screenshot of the current viewport. I can take a screenshot of the entire web page. So like if I go to my blog and it's pages and pages, I can actually say, you know, screenshot the entire thing. And you can even do screenshot, and this is crazy, screenshot selector H1, and it will literally just take a graphical picture of that thing. And let me just show that real quick. There we go. Oh, hey, Ronnie Dangerfield. There's a reason for that. And, oh, preview is correct. How can preview crash? Preview is the smallest program ever. But anyway, so this is a screenshot of just that particular graphic, which is cool. So if you're focused on, or you just want to show off one particular part of your DOM, you can do that directly from the toolbar. So love what Firefox is doing. Just in general, the UI seems a bit nicer, it feels a bit cleaner, and it feels a bit friendlier. And I just really, really dig it right now. So in terms of finding out more about Firefox, on screen right there, I have the URL for how to read the docs in general. And by the way, the Moz Dev Network is a resource that I ignored for years because I thought it was a Firefox-only webpage. Like, it would only show the Firefox HTML, it would only show Firefox CSS. I was completely stupid about that. The Moz Dev Network is web standards in general. It applies to everything related to the web, and it is the #1 resource for finding out about JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. So if you've ever Googled for something and ended up on a site that rhymes with W3 fools and you don't like that, if you just do in Google mdn space whatever, like mdn space string methods, for example, like I'm going to find out about string about the methods of the string object in JavaScript, Google will automatically focus its results just on the Moz Dev Network. So strongly recommend that. Firefox DevTools is the main Twitter account, so this would help you find out what's in the Moz tools right now and obviously how to follow them on Twitter. In terms of learning more about Firefox, it actually does a pretty good job. So I'm going to go here and actually go to Firefox Help. And if you go to Firefox Help, there's a What's New link, which, bam, I like that. Immediately, that's a bit better than Chrome. And if you click there, you get really, really good release notes. Just awesome stuff in general. And it's a great way to find out about what has changed and how to, figure out what's new as well. And they also have specific things just for the developer information. And let me find that out real quick because I had found it before, and it's somewhere on this page. And now I'm not seeing it because I'm blind. But yeah, there we go, developer information. So they also have focused information about specifically what changed in both HTML, CSS, and their dev tools as well. So to me, Firefox is doing the perfect job I mean, they're doing exactly what I expect in terms of documentation. All right, and one more website you can follow as well, and this will be a bit more Firefox related, but it's definitely not just Firefox, is Mozilla Hacks. And pardon me while I take a drink from my giant jug of water. So let's talk about Safari, also known as the browser you use to watch the Apple keynote. So Safari is not the best browser in the world. It's really difficult to find out information about it. I really don't use it too often, but it does have DevTools, and I'll fire it up real quick, and we're already there. And by the way, I was kind of surprised to find that the same key combo works for all the browsers I tested in, Command-Alt-I. I have everything kind of weird on my keyboard, so it's probably not the same for you. So it's kind of weird. Apple has done probably the worst UI job I've ever seen in terms of their dev tools. It is really, maybe I just don't think the Apple way. I'm a big Apple user. I'm on a MacBook Pro right now. I like my iOS devices. But their dev tools just confuse the heck out of me. I will say, in general, they have pretty much everything that you saw in Chrome. They obviously have a console that you could do stuff in. They have a debugger as well. We can go in here and look at the network stuff. One of the things they won't do very well is kind of give you a way to view stuff. This non-obvious little arrow here is how you view the source for that. So it's there. They have storage support. You can see here cookies, local storage, and session storage. But the weird thing they do is that if you're not using the local storage and session storage features, they hide this UI. So if you open up DevTools thinking, hey, can I use it in Safari to look at local storage and session storage, whatever, you won't see the UI there unless you're actually using that feature. Now, they support Web SQL as well. They don't support IndexedDB, but at the same time, you don't see a Web SQL thing here. Reason being is that I'm not actually using Web SQL on this page. But if I didn't know better, I would think, well, okay, I can't use Safari DevTools to debug that. And that is just not true at all. You do have a debugger. You have the DOM as well. So you can go in here and you can muck with stuff. Of course, I have nothing on this particular page. But if I were to go to my own homepage, I can go in here and I could mess with the DOM and change things around to do testing. By the way, am I the only one who has ever gone to CNN and changed the DOM to say something like aliens have landed and then show that page to somebody else? Me? Only one? Okay. Yeah, I've done that because that's just fun, because a lot of people don't know that you can actually do that. So yeah, you have all that support built in. Again, the UI is just a bit weird. By the way, have you guys noticed that the labels just kind of went away? They were there before, right? Yeah, so there they are in this one, and they're gone now on here. I don't know what Apple is doing here. I mean, typically they make extremely high quality stuff, and every time I've used the DevTools here, it's just been a royal pain in the rear. And it's been really kind of awkward to even see, what these particular things meant. Now, I even have icon and text turned on, and it's just not showing up. And something else that changed recently, one of the things that I'll use the console a lot is the fire off function. So let's say I have a page that's broken where you click a button and it fires a function. So that's broken. So I'll go in here and I'll type, function name just to run it manually. This has stopped working for me over the last week. Don't ask me why. It just doesn't work anymore, and it used to. So maybe it's, I believe Safari is at 7.0.5. Maybe it's a bug in there. I tried Googling for it, and apparently no one's using Safari that much, and I'm just not running into it. So I know I'm kind of like piling on hate for this. There is one place where this is going to be very, very important, and that's if you're doing anything on mobile. So as you could probably expect, and by the way, note that the icons, the text is back. I can't tell you why. If you're doing anything with an iPhone, then Safari is going to be your primary way of debugging that. If you go up here, and you can see I have both an iPhone hooked up and I have my simulator hooked up, I can actually open DevTools on that. And what's nice about this is that it will support PhoneGap and Cordova. So I have a sample application here that's running in PhoneGap. It's something I'm working on. I don't want to show that one. I want to show this one instead. And if this is not, working right, I can actually go in here and go to my simulator. And even though this is a PhoneGap app, Cordova, really, I can go in here, open up DevTools, and start mucking around and modifying stuff. And again, this works on the device itself. So what's cool about this is, if for some reason this was a bit too wide, I could actually modify that text to say, maybe an edit to that will make it look a bit nicer. You have the console from there. You have a network. So essentially, I am only using the Safari DevTools to help me debug Cordova applications and the random web pages that I want to debug on mobile Safari. It works well for that, even being awkward, because it's the only option we have. And if you had done any mobile work, 2 or 3 years ago, you recognize that back then all we had was alert statements, which were pretty horrible. So even with me not being terribly happy with this is a far cry better than what we used to have. So it's something, at least, right? Only thing I won't point anything else out about that. And again, so that works with PhoneGap Cordova. If you're using any other of the mobile frameworks that uses a web view, then it should work fine for that as well. I am pretty much only a Cordova person, so that's where my focus is. So in terms of finding out more, they do have good documentation. The link is up there, and when I do share my slide deck, so you can copy it there. It is pretty thorough. Of course, if you want to find out more about Twitter, yeah, good luck on that. As much as I love Apple's products from a developer's perspective in general, their developer engagement is not the best. Maybe they just know that they've already succeeded in winning over the hearts and minds, and they don't have to care about this, but it's unfortunate. I really like Apple, but I wish that they were a bit more verbose in sharing and social media and blogging and whatever. And so speaking of that, if you want to learn more, one conference, right? 1 or 2 conferences added. Other developers that don't work for Apple can share stuff. I'll point out another resource just kind of randomly, caniuse.com. If you've never been there, caniuse.com lets you look at a particular web feature, and it'll tell you exactly what browsers it's built in. So I actually have that baked into my editor where I can open a panel and I can type in, CSS3 and see what the browser support is for in there. So that's someplace else I go to when I'm specifically looking for help with Safari and mobile Safari as well. All right, so one more browser, everyone's favorite browser, right? We all love Internet Explorer. I'm old enough to remember that IE5 was the best browser for a while. Netscape Navigator had kind of, gone to crap for a while. And for at least a year or 2, I remember just loving IE5. It was awesome. Worked great. Since that time, it's kind of lost some of the glamour it used to have. The most famous quote being that it is the browser that you use to download other browsers. Just from me, because I see this in every single web conference I go to. Somebody has the "Let's make fun of IE" slide. Let's move on. Let's drop the IE bashing. It's been fun for the last 5 years to make fun of IE6, but I'm really, really tired of hearing about IE6. I mean, come on. Really, like, the worst browser now is probably more the old Android browser than IE6. If you want to bash something, move to the old stock Android browser and bash the heck out of that. But, it's time to let go of the IE hate. If that's your worst problem, then you're probably pretty darn lucky. And IE has come a long way. So I am running it in VM Fusion, And are you guys having any problems seeing VM Fusion via the screen share? I assume not, but hopefully you guys can see this okay. All right, sweet. So you can also open this up via keyboard combo, but I'm not going to do that because it's in VM Fusion, and I'll probably reboot the machine. But you can go in there and hit F12 or click it from there, and you have, really, really big DevTools. So you have pretty much the same things that you have everywhere else. So you have a console, you have a DOM Explorer, you have these weird icons that really make no sense. IE does some really freaky stuff in terms of error, so that really simple, that error, please don't debug. Remove. I don't want you to do that. Just go back to the console. So that simple X is not defined error. For some reason, IE wants to do some freaky script 50009 error, which is just insane. But it does report it, and it does have a bit of filtering options as well. It does have a debugger. You can see I'm kind of paused in one there. I thought I had removed that, but what do I know? So it does have the debugger. It does have a network checker as well, and it does also do the auditing and performance stuff as well. So it does have pretty much all the tools baked in. Doesn't have a storage monitor, but again, like I said, for Firefox, you can at least use console to say, what's in local storage, etc. So you can do that. So it's still possible. I will point out one thing IE does that's really, really kind of cool. So I built this test, and you may call me crazy, but I wrote some bad HTML. All right, so you can see on line 13, let me just bump that up a little bit. The sad thing about bumping up text for a presentation is that, like, after I'm done, like, my eyes are like, can we please keep it like that? So you see I have my bold and italics. I have them mixed up, right? And I also have a totally unknown HTML tag. I was actually curious what the browsers would do with this. And Firefox, Chrome, and Safari just ignore. Now, obviously, they render them okay. So for this, it does bold and italics, which I'm okay with. And for weird, it just ignores it. But I was curious about the DevTools. Like, what would the DevTools show on this? If we look at Chrome, and let me get back to it, bad HTML, you can see if we look at the DOM, it kind of just freaks out about it, right? So it shows, it actually fixes it in the DOM for me. So, okay, that's fair. Chrome saw the screws, screwy stuff, it fixed it for me. But I would actually prefer if it kind of told me something about it. If I go in console, there's definitely nothing. Surprise, surprise, if you go into IE and look at that, you'll actually see it noticed it. And that's nice. I would like to see Chrome and Firefox do that as well. I mean, obviously, it's not an end of the world type error. And if your editor supports HTML linting, like mine does, it's definitely fixable. But I like that the DevTools was actually proactive about it. So it's doing some interesting things. It's pretty impressive. And if I was on a Windows machine, I could see using IE 11 and possibly being happy about it. So in terms of documentation, again, Microsoft does a great job of it. They do have an entire web page just for IE development. And you can see, I love this right here. They have a specific link just for developers. Again, Chrome, Google, you should have something like this. It's great. They have a Twitter account. They actually replied to me, which is kind of nice. I asked them a question yesterday. I asked them about extending the DevTools. They don't support it. And for learning more, there is a decent IE blog as well. So I got about 3 or 4 minutes left, so just some real quick additional tips. I talked mainly about using DevTools to find the problems. Don't forget that you can also find the problems a little bit earlier if you do linting. Linting is something that I tended to ignore because I thought it was the anal retentive stuff, like use triple equals and, like the old grandma, you must write your JS semicolons. It's not just that. Yeah, certainly it's a bit of that as well, but it'll also tell you about errors. And if your editor supports it, like Brackets does, you can see them while you write. And you have linters for HTML. for JavaScript, for CSS. And you can find this stuff a lot earlier in your development cycle. Now, of course, everyone here is writing unit tests. Yep. Yes, of course we are. Right. So don't forget that a lot of the good unit test frameworks will integrate with your editor. So again, while you type, you can get real-time feedback of when your code is breaking a particular unit test. So that's something else to think about as well. Now, I talked about the network panel in all the browsers. That works normally enough for my testing. Every now and then I've run into weird cases where it just wouldn't pick up everything. For that, I'll switch to a desktop tool, and my primary one is Charles, but Service Capture is also an option as well. Charles costs like $20, I think, and it's definitely worth picking up. For a long time, Charles was the only way to see Flash network travel, but the browsers are doing a better job of that now. Specifically for mobile things, and I know I just said this, but don't forget that both Chrome and Safari let you debug from the desktop to the mobile browsers. So that's really, really useful. If you don't like Safari, you can actually use a tool called Gap Debug, which takes both Chrome Remote and Safari Remote and brings it into just one Chrome tab. That's a free product. You can get it right now. It's currently in beta, so it's not perfect, but it works really cool. Really well, I should say. And kind of a last-ditch effort is something called Winery. This is an open source project that allows you to do remote debugging, but it's useful for those cases where you don't have support for it. Older Android is a great example of that. So Winery actually has kind of an old school web tools type look to it, but it's speaking to your mobile platform. Now you have to embed a script tag in there, so it's not quite as automatic. But again, if you're working on something that doesn't support the new hotness, that is an option as well. So I went up to almost the hour. Thank you guys. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you learned at least one new thing.